so please forgive me if I'm remembering incorrectly, but I think I recall you guys were struggling a little bit around Thanksgiving of last year. It was a challenging time for getting along from what I remember, so I wanted to mainly focus on that for this particular reading because I'm hoping it'll be the most useful and helpful information for you. So first things first, I noticed a little transit that was pretty interesting. Now, I don't know the specifics of what was troubling you guys, but I took a peek at your composite chart transits for around the November-December time period late last year, and I noticed that Mars was transiting your composite first house, so no wonder tensions were high. Mars rules the first house of Aries, and we'll go over it more in depth later on in this video, but it represents our warrior energy, leadership style, hunting style, willpower, masculinity, independence, self-motivation, aggression, assertiveness, sexual passion, addictive tendencies, anger, self-gratification in regards to meeting instinctual needs, how we initiate things, how we seek and use control, how we stand up for ourselves and others, and how we fight to get what we want. Venus is about the enjoyment of your wants and needs, but Mars is about very basic survival. So your first house represents your identity, and it's known as the Aries house. So think lots of Aries energy. It seems like maybe you guys were influenced by this transit as your egos clashed over your relationship identity. One or both of you may have been grasping for control in relationship identity matters, and the vulnerable human ego does not like to be challenged. And on that note, your natal Mars positions square each other. We'll go over that again, like I said, in more detail later on, but that can cause a lot of friction, fire, and heat. And so it makes a lot of sense that you guys were struggling then. Totally, I get it. I'm in the same boat. At the same time that Mars was crossing over your composite first house, it was also squaring your composite Pisces North Node. The North Node is like the destiny trajectory of your life's journey. The South Node is where you came from. The North Node is where you're going. The square aspect is what's known as a hard aspect, and it can represent tension, collision, and it's sprinkled with a little pride and hard-headedness. So this is emphasized for signs in the same modality, but here we have Scorpio Mars, which is fixed, and then we have Pisces North Node, which is mutable, so they're not the same modality. And then, of course, they're both water signs. So, although the square may cause some surface tension in how you both prioritize your relationship values, there are still underlying motivations that are shared between the two of you. And that's shown by the shared water element between the signs. And the key to squares is to act on them, because they serve as kind of an irritant, which draws our attention to something that needs, well, our attention. You can look at it like, well, the square is coming whether or not I want it to, and I can either let it overtake me and my life, or I can get out in front of it and start putting in work. So yeah, aside from that transit and square, let's dive into the basics of your synastry chart. I'd specifically like to focus on the Sun, Moon, Venus, and Mars placements and their interactions. The Sun and Moon because they relate to our identities and emotions, which are of course really important in relationships. How we keep our individual identity and stay true to our own emotions while also melding into and learning to respect another person's identity and emotions. And then I'd like to dissect the Venus and Mars placements and interactions because that's the intertwining of masculine and feminine energies, how love and sex collide, sort of. And of course, these luminaries and planets have so many additional attributes and functions, but in terms of what I'm looking at for you guys and what I have time for, these are the specific areas I'm going to focus on. And when someone's planet or luminary falls into their partner's house, it's the house person who feels the energy exchange more intensely. So just keep that in mind as we go along. I wish I could dive into your Mercury and Pluto and Chirons and all of that, but I have a feeling this is going to be pretty long as it is. So if you want more information, we can chat about that. All right, first up we have the Sun. The Sun rules the 5th house of Leo, and it represents your energy, vitality, soul, ego, your life force, your self-esteem, inner strength, adaptability. It's how we show our personality. It's our goals and drive. The Sun represents the father, the way you pursue playtime and having fun, how you like to be seen and validated, and it represents a superhero that we are striving to become. The ascendant represents how we go about becoming that superhero. In synastry, each person's natal sun lights up and warms whatever it touches in the other person's chart. So your natal Sagittarius sun falls into Josh's 4th house. The 4th house is ruled by Cancer and the moon, so think archetypal Cancerian energy. Home, family, intimacy, the mother, deep innermost feelings, and things like that. This is a beautiful binding placement. You light up Josh's house of home and very personal feelings, and you stimulate him towards domestic matters. This is a really sweet placement because it indicates that you both get along really well in the home. You make great parents together, and you can still maintain a romantic relationship. You bring him a lot of nourishment and fulfillment in terms of what he thinks a domestic partnership should look like. He may be convinced that he's known you before, and this placement also shows that you are comfortable here. You can truly be yourself and be accepted, and you bring out things in Josh that others may not have been able to. Keep in mind that your natal sun is in your 12th house, which is the house of the collective unconscious and hidden things, fear, the unknown, spirituality, and it's where self-undoing can take place. This is complicated having the sun, the ego here, because you can unintentionally act from your unconscious without realizing it. You may go back and forth between wanting to hide and wanting to shine. So as you're giving nourishment to Josh via your sun in his 4th house, try to keep a strong sense of self. Try not to get lost in serving him and others. You have an uncanny sense of seeing into the collective unconscious, so don't let that overlap your own convictions, even though you may see yourself kind of like a mystery. Don't let fear of how you'll be seen hold you back from reaching your highest potential and speaking up for yourself. You speak up for others just fine. You've got Mars in the 3rd house of communication. You're very fiery when it comes to standing up for other people, but you also need to remember to speak up for yourself too. You are worth just as much as the value that you put on others. Josh's natal sun falls into your 1st house, which, like we discussed, is ruled by Aries and Mars. The 1st house is the house of self, and you can refer to the earlier bit where we went over everything that Mars represents, and we'll go over it again later. Excuse me. So Josh's sun in your 1st house indicates that he really lights up your self-image, and you're able to express your egos and needs pretty fluently between each other. You can get a little ego boost by having Josh as your partner, and he can make you feel really good about yourself, which is great, but it's just important to pay close attention to how attached you may feel to how he makes you feel really good about yourself. Just because if and when the relationship hits normal rough patches and that attention seems like it's being withheld, it may feel like an ego punch to the gut. So it's important to be careful in relying too much on that attention as it relates to your value, because your value rings true even if that attention is temporarily absent. And just Capricorn suns are unintentionally really good at shutting their loved ones out when there's been like an argument. Being ruled by Saturn, the planet of restriction and discipline, Capricorns don't typically like confrontation. It can seem kind of messy, and they would honestly rather exert their energies elsewhere, get back to work than deal with what they kind of see as emotional baggage, or in some cases even immaturity, depending on the person that they're dealing with. But of course, having emotions and wanting to have a healthy relationship discussion is neither emotional baggage nor immaturity, but Capricorns can sometimes struggle to see it that way. They like things to be professional, level-headed, and they can see emotional moments as threatening to that kind of general aura of calm and maturity. Emotions are hard to quantify and predict, and Capricorns just naturally want to avoid things like that. But that being said, this is a great position for partnerships, feeling like a solid team and being able to work together really well. As for major sun aspects, your sun trines Josh's moon and conjuncts his Mars. Your sun trining Josh's moon is a really good aspect. It shows that you both uniquely feel whole together. There's a strong affinity you have toward each other, and you feel comfortable communicating with each other. Mutually feeling like things are resolved fairly, which is also emphasized by your composite Libra ascendant. Just be aware that trines, while they may be easy aspects for getting along, they can create a different kind of ease on the other side of the pendulum too. For example's sake, my husband and I have a grand water trine in our composite natal chart. Sounds great, right? A grand water trine indicates an intense emotional connection, a camaraderie, an ability to communicate at a really deep level. But honestly, it's up to us as a couple to use that power, if you will, for good or for evil. Because it just means that we have an easy flow. We can poke each other easily or boost each other up really easily, if that makes sense. So this aspect can be used to your benefit or your detriment. It just depends on how you guys utilize it. It relates to an energy that unfolds naturally and over time. There's not much resistance either way. Your sun conjuncting Josh's Mars is a spicy pairing. Lots of passion and fire. And it looks like it started really quickly in your relationship. This is really all about physical contact, which pairs perfectly with the huge emotional connections that you guys have everywhere else in your composite and synastry charts.